Chris Eubank Jr. versus Benn is one of the best fights I have ever seen in my entire life. People use the phrase a lot, that was a movie. This last night was a fucking movie. Make no mistake about it. And it was one of those ones like The Godfather where they spaced them out 30 years apart sometimes, right? The third episode of The Godfather, people raved about the first two. The third one, let down. The third one of this, Eubank versus Benn 3, smashed it. This was as good as the other two easily. And I love the fact that loads of people were like, oh, like looking down on it beforehand. No, they're not even world champions. It absolutely delivered on every conceivable level. And before I even get to the fight, one of the moments of the night for me was when Chris Eubank Sr. showed up. I've been so frustrated with the way he's been talking about his own son lately. So disappointed to see a relationship that we watched at the start of Eubank Jr.'s career be so good and then be so together, and then for them to be so at odds with each other, and particularly Chris Eubank Sr. treating his son like crap, man. It wasn't on. This fucking moment was absolutely crazy. I should have known he couldn't stay away from the limelight. But look, the love for his son came through over, the nonsense that was standing in the way of it. And it's a shame that it's taken so long, but I'm glad they've sorted it out. And this was a really cool moment, seeing Benn and Nigel Benn watch on as Eubank and his dad come in. It really did feel like a movie. This here is one of my earliest memories of boxing ever, is Chris Eubank standing there as simply the best players, and he waits to come out and he makes his opponent wait for time. And the arrogance, the showmanship. Yeah, he wasn't the most likable guy, but my God, he was entertaining. And that's simply the best entrance, is without doubt one of the best entrances in the history of boxing. It was a bit of a dream of I just hope they patch it up, and wouldn't it be amazing if he came out to his dad's song? I even said it on the live stream before it even happened. Imagine you hear the Simply the Best and he comes out, and when it hit, and when Chris Eubank Jr. walks out with his father right next to him, it was emotional. It was goosebumps. It was electric. It was boxing history. How often will we ever see again two fighters who went to war 30 years ago have their sons go to war and walk out to his dad's music after this pain that they've been through in their relationship, and obviously the pain of losing a family member, and to just have this moment in front of 65,000 in attendance at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It was beautiful. And you even see in the eyes of Chris Eubank Jr., someone who has been an early man in boxing, and he's gotten to the top level and he's fallen short. He's never been having these kind of AJ moments where he's got a stadium full of people only for him. He's never had that moment, really. And this was his moment, and you could see he was like, I'm the man now. I imagine there's a lot of emotion going through him in regards to his brother, Seb, who he lost, God bless him. And there's tears in his eyes, but he pulls it together and he keeps it together, and then he starts making the way to the ring, and you hear that Still Dre hit, and whoa. Honestly, this guy, he may not be the most talented fighter ever, the greatest fighter we'll ever produce in Britain, but the guy's got style, right? And he's a showman. And every boxing fan who I've known for many years who's criticised him for not being this and not being that, a lot of them got behind him in this fight, and for multiple reasons. But I think they just thought, we probably haven't appreciated what we've had in this guy, and the way he commanded those press conferences, the charisma he showed, how he held court. He shut down Eddie Hearn. No one shuts down Eddie Hearn, right? Eddie Hearn's fantastic at what he does. Eubank basically left a mark in this event of I am special, right? For one reason or another, he's special, and you couldn't help but admire him. And Benn's entrance was cool as well, don't get me wrong, but that was unfucking believable. And by now, I would assume most of you have seen this fight, and what a war it was, what a masterpiece it was, when these two styles and these two personalities clashed just as well as their fathers did, and that not taking a backward step, and that determination to go out there. The kind of determination I don't know we've ever seen from Chris Eubank Jr. in his entire career. You've seen them in the stare down before they fought. It was a look in each other's eyes of, I'm going to kill you before you kill me. It was way deeper than what you see in the most ever boxing matches you'll ever see. This was was so personal. I said it in the, my little promo trailer. Motherfucker, it was personal. And look, we've never seen Conor Benn tested in this kind of situation, so this was new for him as well. But I think both of them, for the same reason, but especially Eubank, they dug deeper than they've ever dug before because of the why in this fight. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about belts. And as great as they are, it was about something way more than that. It was for the love of their father.
And there is my man, True Geordie, spitting facts. Facts on top of facts on top of facts on top of facts. And my counterpunch, first off, the reaction when Chris Eubank Jr., that was pretty much the pinnacle before the war. I had to give homage.
Oh, check it out, people! Chris Eubank Sr. in the building! He's in that sucker! That's what I'm talking about. It gets better. You know he's gonna let his son do that. I can't let my son go like that. Eubank Sr. and Jr. in the building, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Hey!
And it was absolutely amazing to see Chris Eubank Sr. there, because people had already pretty much gave up on the fact that he's going to be there. He's not going to be there. He said what he's going to say about it. It's a spectacle. It's a disgrace. My son's a disgrace. You know what I mean? I'm really embarrassed by the whole lot of you and all that. Then he opens the door. It's Senior. Smiling at him with his son right behind him. And the crazy thing was, it was more than that. It was more than someone just showing up. Okay, I'm here, there I am. No. You seen the energy, okay? You seen the tone. You seen how they gelled. He had his hand behind his son, giving him assurance and support that, hey, I'm here with you. You know what I mean? It was more than just, hey, I'm here, let me go. No. It was a lot more than that. You know what I mean? And then the crazy thing, the reflection, the POV of Ben, Nigel and Conor looking at Chris, and Chris coming down the hall was just historic. I'm getting goosebumps over here. But what I'm saying is, it was absolutely off the chain. And it was a nostalgic moment. And he was right about it. True Geordie nailed it with the Tina Turner. Simply the best, right? That was one of those nostalgic like things, because people remember from yesteryear that were in boxing back then, and they have something to reference, okay? This is more than just Chris Jr., because without Chris Sr., there was no Chris Jr. Without Nigel Benn, there's no Conor Benn. So it was definitely something that continued all the way through the event. That's the crazy part about it, all the way through the event. And to counter something else that True Geordie had to say concerning the styles, similar styles. The boxer, I'm going to keep calm, said the Eubanks. The fighter, I'm going to release hell, from the Benns. So it was all the way what you would expect. But people saying, well, they're not as good as their fathers were. Nigel Benn punched harder than Conor Benn and all this, that, and the other. And let me tell you guys something. I think the fact that people were so surprised because they knew that, no, they weren't as good as their fathers were. But that's what made the fight better. I remind people, one of the best fights that I remember seeing was Arturo Gatti versus Mickey Ward. Well, none of those guys were a Floyd Mayweather or a Manny Pacquiao or Oscar De La Hoya or a Sweet Pea Whitaker. They weren't that giftedly, technically, defensively sound. And because they weren't, we had witnessed a fight of magnitudes on top of magnitudes, okay? Because those guys got hit oohs and they got hit ahs, and you heard that all night long because these guys weren't as technically gifted. And because they weren't, they were able to get hit, and they were vulnerable to certain shots. You know what I mean? So that's what made it entertaining. In fact, the best fights are from people that are not as talented. that are not worried about getting hit. They have flaws because that in those flaws is an opportunity for scoring. Scoring is you get punched in the face, you get punched in the chest, you get punched in the gut, you get punched anywhere that you get hit or you're not protecting or whatever and however you protect yourself. So that's what left it open for that type of excitement. You see what I'm saying? So it all gels together. The only thing is Conor was a little smaller. Well, he was a lot smaller than Conor, than Chris. But at the same time, though, he packed a punch that surprised everyone, including Chris. Okay, that's the crazy thing, and during the press conference, TG, he touched down on this, like, who in the hell shuts up Eddie Hearn? Chris Eubank Jr. was. On top of the fact, he already insulted them by speaking his truth, by calling them all, including Frank Warren, including Eddie Hearn, scumbags. Scumbags. He called him a scumbag, and that was even before all of that. You see what I mean? And then he was able to shut up Eddie Hearn. You see what I mean? That could have been Eddie's incentive or Eddie's red or cord to pull that, no, I'm not going to let him out. I'll talk to me, but he couldn't. So that was a historic win already for Chris Eubank Jr. You see what I mean? So that was a good thing. The fight itself spoke for itself. We talked about the fight on the reflections in my live today. We seen it and witnessed it live yesterday, and it was absolutely incredible. And I do agree with TG that this is one of the best fights that we've probably ever seen. You know what I mean? Because like the AJ fight, the last AJ fight we saw, sure, it had all the people. It had 30,000 more people. But at the same time, it didn't produce the type of excitement that these guys were able to produce. Okay. And it did come down to one thing. And one of the last things that TG mentioned in that segment was the love for their fathers. And that by itself is the most important thing. Like I told you guys, these guys fought with more than just stamina and skill. They fought with a lot more than that. Hate, grit, pride, love. They fought with a lot of these things stirred up within them. And Chris Eubank Jr., he showed that he wanted to win. He rallied like he wanted to win. This guy was starched. Benn did the same thing. You knew he wanted to get starched. He was starched. He knew, hey, I'm tired, but I'm not going to quit because the love I have for my father and I have to protect and make sure I carry that name right. Okay, so it was absolutely fantastic. Shout out to True Geordie in the Pain Game for covering it on DAZN. And great breakdown. You guys tell me what you think of this counterpunch of True Geordie's reaction of one of the best fights of the year. Definitely, maybe the best fights that we've seen anyway. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch.